Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to this episode, I've got to throw in a quick recap of the Duke Clemson game. It was fantastic. I'll talk about that a little bit more in response to some voicemails that we've got. So we're going to kick it off with a call from co-coordinator Tim. Why don't we hear what Tim has to say?
Hey man, this is Tim from Roanoke. Just calling in to say I was thrilled to see the Blue Devils prevail last night. I thought we looked fast, we looked hard-nosed. I was worried that the defense was wearing down in the second half, but they, as the saying goes, they bent but never broke. I have a couple questions and an observation. Wallace Wade looked wonderful on TV last night with the big crowd. I know there were a lot of Clemson fans there. At the end of the game, with the students lining up to charge the field, the announcers were really wanting to anoint them the Wade Wackos or something like that. And so I'm curious, knowing you were there, how you would describe the atmosphere compared to what it's usually like on game day there, and if the student support was really noticeable, and how premature you think the announcers were being about the Wade Wackos. Also, I think you're on record as having predicted a 7-5 season based on last night's result. I'm wondering if you're sticking by that or if you're tempted to move in a rosier direction like Lee Rodeo or your dad. And finally, based on Clemson's problems with place kicking, with underwhelming performance by their first-year starter, and their general inability to score in the red zone and so forth, I'll just note that I hope this win last night looks as good in hindsight as it does now. Go Duke!
Thank you, Tim, for that call. Great commentary as always. I was hoping we could have caught it together, but I know you were busy, and I can't wait to resume our regular viewing habits of watching Duke play and playing old-time music and drinking the occasional adult beverage. Very much looking forward to that. As far as the stadium, I mean, it was a great environment. It was much better than it normally is, and the games that I've been to towards the end of the prior era until now, you've seen a big improvement from where we were. The fans are not apathetic. They're excited. They're engaged. And one of the best things that I noticed were all the former players who were around. We happened to be sitting near Chris Combs and his family, and they're just wonderful people. And also Sims Lenhart and his family. They're just wonderful people. Talked to them all through halftime. It was great. Ran into Chris and his family again as we were heading down to the field, and just speaking with guys like that who were so instrumental and so key to Duke's history, the football history. It was a great game. It was a great tailgating experience, and running into the Duke football talk guys was awesome too. It was a lot of fun. I saw some other friends there that I know from the podcast and from coming to games. I will say, though, as far as the Wade Wackos, I don't have a problem with them getting a nickname, but Wade Wackos, the Wallace Wade Wackos or whatever, it's just so derivative of the Cameron Crazies. I mean, let's do something a little bit more creative. I understand it's going to happen, fine, whatever. I just think it lacks creativity, but, there's nothing you can do about it. It's the nickname that's going to be there. I don't dislike it, but I just think it's kind of a lazy nickname. Now, as far as where I am on the wins for this team, that is a really, really good question. As we were driving home after the game, we spent a lot of time talking about what the first, I guess, week 0, week 1, first 2 weeks of the season look like and have looked like for the ACC teams. There's a couple of teams that I need to watch more of, but I'll tell you, what we saw from Duke last night was a team that was not scared by the moment, was a team that maybe if you look at the stats, you kind of wonder how they won, but they still won. Luck favored the Blue Devils, which was not something that we have been able to say a whole lot for a long time. And the way that Clemson lost was a way that Duke would customarily lose for years. Seeing Duke hang in there, be well positioned, be well disciplined. There were a couple of penalties. There were some reasons for that, but the occasional drop, everybody has that. The muff punt was a big deal, but they didn't panic. They didn't get scared. They didn't give up. They just stayed disciplined. They stayed content. They stayed focused, and they waited until they had a moment, and then bam, they just go ahead and bust out a long run or bust out a nice drive or get a turnover. I mean, they really won a game in a way that you have to win if you are going to be able to go far into getting a good bowl game and to getting a lot of wins and having a successful season. So let's run through the predictions again. I think I had them right around maybe 7-8 wins. But look, Northwestern, that should be a win. Lafayette, well, let me start over again because I missed a team, and that's not fair. I was scrolling and I missed something. But look, you've got Lafayette, that should be a win, even on a short turnaround. Northwestern should be a win. UConn should be a win. Duke versus Notre Dame, I need to watch a little bit more Notre Dame. That's one that I think we are probably going to be worried about. But Duke should run into that game or roll into that game 4-0. From what I've saw for the first week of NC State, I think Duke can beat them. Now, maybe I didn't have that earlier, so that'd be 5 wins. Florida State's going to be a challenge, so you're thinking 5-2. But look, Louisville, Wake Forest, Virginia, Pitt, those are all winnable games. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and then North Carolina, it's a rivalry game. It's always one that either team could win. That could get you to 9. I'm not necessarily predicting Duke to get to 9 wins yet. I need to watch a little bit more of UNC, but I think 8 to 9 wins is very, very possible here. There are some games that could go either way. You got Notre Dame, you got Florida State, you got North Carolina. Those are 3 losses, and of course Pitt, just because God does not want us to beat Pitt for some reason. So 8, 9 wins is I'm feeling a lot better about that after what I saw from the Blue Devils Monday night. I mean, they played very intelligent, disciplined, hard-nosed football, and it may not always be pretty, but it doesn't have to be as long as you come away with a win at the end of the day. So now let's turn over to Tyler. Now he has a voicemail. Let's hear what Tyler has to say.
It's Tyler Lesser. We're back again. First off, anyone who's listening, big shout out. Love the podcast. If you're not, subscribed and listening every week, what are you doing? Get you a little plug in. If I lose my voice, sorry, trying to recover from last night still when, we all rushed the field. But got a question regarding, kind of the game last night. How awesome is it to know that against the top 10 team in the country, our offense didn't look great. Minus Riley's really big run, we kind of sputtered out a lot. And, Clemson's really good defensively. Don't get me wrong. They're one of the best defensive teams year in, year out. But, despite the miscues and, the 27 false starts we had, how great of a feeling is it to know that we've got a defense to where on our worst offensive night imaginable, we can still be the top 10 team in the country?
Well, Tyler, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. You are a regular listener. You engage constantly on Twitter, which is great. I enjoy and appreciate all the fan interaction. My voice is also killing me still. I think I'm almost back to normal. And again, the way that Duke won that game, I just talked a lot about it, but it was really impressive. Those are the kind of games that you're going to have to win when maybe you're not getting a whole lot of yards, or maybe you're not moving the ball necessarily as well as the other team is. Again, look at the difference in the box score as to how many yards Clemson had running and passing, total yards, time of possession, to the extent that stat matters. But, again, you look at the box score, you might wonder, how did Duke win? Well, they won by just being a very physical team. They were tough, and they just really beat Clemson. They took advantage of all of Clemson's mistakes, and I think that's a great win. It's just a great, great win. Now, before we get into the episode, I just want to say I really appreciated running into all the people that I ran into and the chance to talk to them. But I also want to appreciate Steve Weissman, who managed to find our tailgate, stopped by and said hello, and we caught up for a little bit. It was great. And Steve, I cannot wait to have you back on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to it. So with that, let's get into the episode. It was pre-recorded on September 3rd, so in the episode itself, there's not going to be a lot of discussion about the Clemson game. I've done that here, but you should get a prediction from Dad. And I will say this, after Duke beat Clemson with the 89 guys there, the 89 team there, with Spurrier there, with all the former players who were there, I think it's fair to say that we are all in Richlandia now. As always, go Duke.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bull City Coordinators Duke Football Coverage Podcast. You can follow us at our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. You can send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. You can find us on practically every single social media site. You know where to find us. You know where to hit us up. And most important, you know the number to call if you want to get on the podcast, which we have done recently, a voicemail episode. If you want to leave a message with your thoughts, comments, or questions, just give us a call, 540-632-0160. And speaking of voicemails, we have a voicemail from Cash Rogers who called in. Let's listen to that now.
My name is Cash Rogers. I'm a big Duke football fan. Duke is just such a great football team, and I'm so excited for this Duke game. I've been pumped. I'm ready to go. I hope we destroy Clemson. We run the ball down their throat. Hope Ryan Leonard has a great game, and you might see me on the Jumbotron. I wear pajamas. I got me a jersey on and everything. So I'm just pumped, ready. Hope Ryan Leonard has a great day. Hope Jacob Monk has a great day. Hope Justin Pickett has a great day. Graham has a great game. Hope the whole line and hope the wide receivers. Hope Ryan Leonard can connect to them and everything. And the defense. I hope Dwayne Carter sacks the mess out of that QB. And I hope that the head coach, Dabo Swinney, I like him, but right now I do not like him anymore. So I like when they beat Carolina. So, yeah. And I hope the defense has a great day. I hope Rivers and everything. So that's it. Bye.
Thank you, Cash, for calling in. We are recording this the day before the Clemson game, so we don't know how it turned out, but we are rooting for a Blue Devils win and a glorious Duke victory. But turning from that to our next opponent, the Lafayette Leopards, we have a guest who is the sports editor for the Lafayette, which is the oldest college newspaper in Pennsylvania. He is here to help us get to know Duke's next opponent, the aforementioned Lafayette Leopards. Charlie Berman, how are you, sir?
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Glad to do it. Can you give us a chance to get to know you a little bit? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your job as sports editor and how you ended up at Lafayette?
Yeah, so honestly, when I was looking for schools a couple of years ago, I was looking for a school, a liberal arts school, that had opportunities like a big school, but the competition of a smaller school, somewhere where I could participate in, being in the newspaper while also, doing a double major plus a minor while also doing other things around campus. And when I was looking around, Lafayette, I felt was the best option for me. And all the way out from California, I chose Lafayette College. I think my job as sports editor really comes down to a lot of delegation, a lot of kind of giving advice to the younger guys, making sure that they are set up in the right position to, get the best interviews possible, have the best information possible, especially when, our paper doesn't necessarily fund a way to get to away games. I think providing our writers with the best ways of, learning what happened, being able to watch everything that they're going to be covering, and then putting them in good positions to interview and setting them up well.
You mentioned a double major and a minor. What are your areas of focus?
So I am an economics and public policy double major with a minor in government law.
And do you have plans to stay in the journalism field after you finish up at Lafayette, or what are you thinking about for the future?
So I've definitely thought about possibly doing some freelance work, but I think that the journalism field is a little crowded for me right now. I think that long term, I would probably, try to explore something within my course of study, and then see if I can do some journalistic work, like writing on the side, or possibly doing a podcast like this.
Well, it's podcasting is a little bit easier than I thought it would be. The thing that's hardest for me is trying to track people down. And unlike most people who do these, I have to schedule these ridiculously far in advance because of my legal practice. Otherwise, it won't happen. Trying to get stuff on the calendar at the last minute is a total pain in the neck, but it can be done, and it's a lot of fun. And hopefully, if you do that, you get to find a topic that you like and run with it. So we will definitely keep tabs on that going forward. But why don't we switch and talk about the Leopards? I think that's a team that a lot of fans, myself included, don't know a whole lot about. I think this is the first time these two teams are going to play. So can you kind of introduce us to the Lafayette program historically and how the program has been generally, and then also tell us about yesterday's game?
Definitely. So, just to give an overview of the program, we are technically a 3-time national championship winner. Those all came before World War II. We have been a traditional power throughout the early part of, college football's birth. Like a lot of small liberal arts schools in the Northeast, and like a lot of the Ivy schools, once the GI Bill happened, the amount of our applicants kind of stayed the same, whereas these other schools kind of skyrocketed, and we began to fill out of national picture. This is a school in the Patriot League, so some of our main rivalries are the Lehigh Mountain Hawks, with which we have the oldest college football rivalry, the most played college football rivalry of all time, 158 meetings. We've won 81 of those meetings as compared to Lehigh's 72. There have also been 5 ties. And now we compete obviously in the Patriot League. We'll usually do about 1 FBS game per year. And, we do our best to kind of put ourselves in a position where, we can put up a fight in that game. We went to Air Force a couple of years ago, and, maybe the score didn't reflect it, but we were down only by 14 going into the fourth quarter. We've played some good teams close. We played Temple close last year. And, I think our defense keeps us in games right now. Our offense will struggle from time to time. However, we have some really significant players on defense that really help keep every game close and every game interesting.
You mentioned guys on defense who can help get things, keep things close. I saw in getting ready for this that you guys put a player on the Ravens roster earlier this year. Can you talk a little bit about Malik Ham?
Yeah, Malik Ham is one of the best players that Lafayette has ever seen. He's an incredible human being. He is one of the hardest workers I've ever had the opportunity to meet and get to know. I can't say enough about every single positive quality that he has. He has a tremendous work ethic. Everything that he does 100%. He was able to do Lafayette's core curriculum and graduate with a high GPA while also being the best football player that any of us in this modern era of Lafayette have ever seen. And, he put on about 20 pounds in the span of 1 off season, got an invite to play with the Ravens, and took advantage of every single opportunity that he had and was presented to him. And I'm glad for him, because there's no one who deserves that opportunity more.
One thing we didn't mention, and I want to get into your head coach here in a second, though. Actually, tell us where Lafayette, the school, is located, and kind of give us some geographical sense of what that's nearby, so we get an understanding of where you guys are coming in from.
Yeah, so we are from the Lehigh Valley. So, the song Bethlehem by or Allentown by Billy Joel. I apologize. And Bethlehem also in this area. We have about 1.5 million people who live within the Lehigh Valley. It's a burgeoning network right on the New Jersey border between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I'm trying to think of, the best place. We're about an hour from New York and an hour from Philly, equidistant.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your head coach, and that'd be a good way to segue into the game. Yesterday, you guys played Sacred Heart. Tell us about, this is the second year for your head coach. Tell us a little bit about your head coach, and then tell us how you guys kicked off the season against Sacred Heart.
Yeah. So, Coach Trox has coached at Lafayette actually 3 different times. He was a former player and then immediately returned to be a graduate assistant, came back a little while later as the DB's coach in the early aughts, and then came back again in the early 2010s. He then went to Franklin and Marshall, became the head coach there, and completely turned around their program and led them to one of their first conference titles in their history. Completely engaged the alumni in putting together a whole new field and field complex for their roster. And just last year, after the letting go of Coach John Garrett, who's now the offensive recruiting director for Florida State, we found Coach Trox again and gave him the opportunity to be the head coach here. He's kind of completely turned around the culture. I think a lot of what we had was less formal than, what we have now. There's a lot more, rigorous work at all times. I think I can tell that our football players are, really working hard. They're really doing well, and they've bought in, and that's the most important part. And he has full autonomy and control of that locker room. And, that's something that's really, really important, especially when you have so many athletes that, aren't at that top level, aren't at the 4 and 5 star level, when you're trying to get, guys who are also concentrated on academics, also concentrated on, different things, different clubs that they're in at the school.
And then tell us how the season has started so far. I know we're doing this the day after your first game of the season and leading into the Blue Devils for next week, but tell us how the first game went yesterday.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, our team is primarily reliant on our defense, and our defense really showed out yesterday. We got out to a hot start. We started 7-0. We ran the ball extremely well. Jamar Curtis, who's our starting running back, ran for 148 yards or 184 yards. A lot of those came on the first 2 drives. And, I think that going forward, that's something to pay attention to. Our line is better than it's been in my 4 years here at Lafayette. A lot of our guys who, have been building up through the ranks throughout their entire time here at Lafayette are now finally getting their opportunity to play. All of our experienced guys are now even more experienced, and overall, they seem to, finally be seizing that opportunity. Through the air, we still really struggle, and you can see that based on, our QBs not, putting up huge numbers through the air. However, all of our QBs are threats to run. All of our QBs are, mobile, and that's just an added element that, the Duke defense is going to have to, contend with. Obviously, there is definitely a talent gap, but I think our defense keeps us in games, and there are different elements to our offense that, need to be paid attention to.
Well, talk to us about the way they run the ball. Is it an option setup? Is it more of a power running? Is it just kind of a zone read? What are we looking at there?
So it's more of a zone read. It's primarily out of shotgun. However, the push that they'll get within the first 3 yards will determine whether our QBs are usually going to keep the ball, or if Jamar or, any of our other running backs, Najee Adams, if they're going to get the ball. So it's primarily a zone read kind of deal. And then once in a while, they'll switch it up in order to give the defense, a little bit of a different look. Something that I think that they've been concentrated on this year as compared to last year is we ran a lot of plays that, would go very, very fast, and that kept our defense on the field, because every 3 and out put the defense right back on that field. And that's something that I think that they struggled with originally. And that was probably the result of a lot of our defense giving up a lot of, big long distance plays. But now, I think in Coach DeMuzio, who's our offensive coordinator, I think now in his second year, he's done a very good job of, slowing things down, making sure that everything that they have in their ability to control is also, looking towards the defense and making sure that, they keep them off the field, get them the break that they need.
So should the Blue Devils expect to see a lot of kind of a no huddle, but a mixed no huddle where you get to the line quickly and then you slow down, burn 20 or 25 seconds off the clock and then snap the ball?
I attribute, the things that we run a lot to, maybe Penn State in 2016, 2017, where they would get to the line and then kind of read out the play. Everyone looks to the sideline in that regard. So, they'll be at the sideline and not let the Blue Devils really get a chance to make a substitution, but then they'll slow down, get set, and then they'll look for the play over there on the sideline. And, that is something that I think has changed this year, and it worked really well, or a lot better than it did last year.
You've talked a lot about the running backs. Other than the running backs, and I'm looking at the box score from yesterday, it looks like Najee Adams is all over the field, but who are the main offensive weapons for Lafayette?
So I will say we have three extremely talented wide receivers, Chris Caracia, and then we have number 86, Elijah Stewart, who's our slot receiver, one of the shiftiest people I've, ever seen. A lot of the guys who come to Patriot League schools, there's usually, some kind of deal that, detracts them from going to a Power 5 program, going to an FBS program. So someone like Elijah, who's extremely shifty, extremely fast, he might not have the speed at 5'6" to be able to, hack it at these upper levels. However, his shiftiness is always something that needs to be paid attention to. And then on the other side, Virginia Tech transfer Carl Smith, one of our offensive captains this year, is also very, very talented. On the line, we have our center, Mike Barr, who has been getting constant push since he was a freshman. He has been an incredible, leader in that locker room, has been for a while. And he's finally kind of blossomed into this football player that backs up all this, leadership talent that he's been able to show throughout the time. And then Notre Dame transfer, former 4-star John Olmsted is also, really, he struggled with injuries throughout his time at Lafayette, but he really played well yesterday. And I think this is going to be the start of a really good season for him.
And what position was the last person that you mentioned?
So he's on the line. He's kind of a rover, but he can play guard and tackle. He also even played center for us last year.
So you've got some people who are experienced with, I guess, the upper echelons of college football, have some familiarity with the ACC. On the offensive side of the ball, you've talked a lot about the defense. Tell us what we should expect from the Leopards defensively.
Yeah, so I think the person to start and end with is number 26, Marco Olivas. He's a two-time captain. He's returned for his 5th year. He is an insane leader. He's been extremely successful. He's been in the top 5 in the Patriot League in tackles for 4 of his 5 years. Right now, I think that he is someone who's all over the field, someone who's constantly someone to pay attention to. He follows the ball really well. Other people who seem to be blossoming right now is fellow senior Preston Forney. Preston is someone who has worked really hard. He's been on the field since he was a freshman, but not necessarily receiving the accolades that Marco has. But yesterday he had one of the best games of his entire career and is really someone who's showcasing true talent on the end. Gabe Du Bois, he's one of the most unsung heroes on this team. He's a lockdown corner, locking down everyone from people on Temple to normal Patriot League defenders. He's someone who, when we played Holy Cross, they couldn't throw on him, and that was one of the main reasons we took them to such a close game last year. Holy Cross, of course, one of the best teams in the entire FCS, and plays, I think, Boston College this week, and I think that's a game to pay attention to.
I want to ask you about that because I watched a fair amount yesterday while I was getting work done. This is probably one of the greatest rare times that I have in my life. everybody but me is out of the house, and it's football weekends. It's silent, and I can get work done. It's glorious. And I I watched, for some reason, a lot of the NIU Boston College game. I thought NIU had a good chance to win it. They did. And earlier this season, me and another guest, Dan Siegel, were looking at that Holy Cross game, and we both said, Holy Cross could probably beat BC and may beat BC. Do you have any thoughts on that game? I know it's a little bit outside of what we necessarily came on to talk about, but you mentioned it. I'd like to get a little bit more intel from you on that.
No, totally. I think that the things that Boston College struggles with, mainly their up front, is something that Holy Cross is extremely talented in. And, when we're talking about narratives throughout the game, this is a Holy Cross team led by one of the most up and coming coaches in all of college football. He started in Division III, completely turned around a program that was, this is Bob Chesney. He turned around a program that was down in the dumps, made them a perpetual winner, then came to Holy Cross, has done the same thing to a point where they've won the last 3 Patriot League titles. And, they're a favorite to win a 4th. They're a favorite to compete with North Dakota State and South Dakota State for, an FCS title. And if we're like I said, if we're talking about narratives, this is someone who's coached at a religious institution. He's an up and coming coach. If Boston College can't get it going this year, I could definitely see Jeff Hafley maybe, getting the boot and seeing if, Bob Chesney could be that person who could come in and turn Boston College around.
Yeah, and he has done tremendously well since 2018 in the Patriot League. His conference record is remarkable, 23-3 coming into this season. I mean, that is amazing. They haven't lost a conference game since 2019.
Yeah, I mean, there is really nothing you can say that hasn't been said within Patriot League circles, but for a broader audience, I can't underestimate how much work he's done to turn around that program. And, Holy Cross is a small school in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he's made them a perpetual winner. They compete alongside, like I said, the likes of North Dakota State, and they're a school of 3,600 kids. And, North Dakota State is not. They're upwards of 10,000. They're a state school. Their stadium seats 40,000 in the Fargo Dome. And, Holy Cross has now become someone who's giving them a run for their money. And it really is all down to Bob Chesney, because he really has kind of turned around that program.
Well, let's get back to the Leopards and the Blue Devils. And yeah. I appreciate all your commentary on the Holy Cross game, because people, I think, are going to be trying to poach that coach if he has another good season. I mean, why wouldn't you? But let's talk about how you think the Blue Devils will match up against the Leopards. And one thing I'd love to hear your comments on is the very short turnaround that Duke has coming into this game, and how that would translate playing a team that likes to run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that I was definitely paying attention to. I also think, the amount of talent that Duke kind of showcased last year and didn't necessarily bring back is also going to be a highlight we're going to, see during the Clemson game tonight or tomorrow. Is it tomorrow night or tonight?
Tomorrow
night. We're going to see, a lot of new people on the field, and I'm excited to see someone like a team like Clemson who, does like to grind, especially with the new quarterback in Kate Klubnik. We're going to see a lot of running from them. I think it will be interesting to see, how Duke responds, because I think Lafayette, using a full week, is going to be preparing using that. I think that, Clemson, in the sense that their quarterback is pretty inexperienced, and we're in the same boat where, our most experienced QB is a sophomore. So I think that you're going to see a lot of running from both of us. And I on a short week, I think it's definitely something to think about in terms of paying attention to how much we're going to run the ball and how much they're going to run the ball and how much is going to be put on the Duke front and the Duke linebackers to try and consistently stop the running attack of both teams. Definitely not trying to compare us with Clemson. I'm just saying that we are going to be a difficult follow-up in terms of the amount of pressure that's put on the front seven.
And one thing that will be interesting to see how that unfolds for Duke, especially a team that runs a 4-2-5 like the Blue Devils do, is the short turnaround and some unknowns. The D line for Duke is pretty solid. I mean, we've got Carter and Franklin back, and we've got Oben and a bunch of other guys there. But the linebackers, there's some unknown. You got Freeman, who may start, Cam Dillon, who may start, and then Dorian Mausi. How those three come together and play will be interesting to see. And Cam Dillon has, I think, an Ivy League background. I should know the answer to this, but I can't recall right off the top of my head which school he went to before he transferred to Duke. So I am killing time to, yes, Ivy League background. He's good, but how he's going to hold up as the main guy without Shaka will be interesting to see. We'll know more after Monday night, but I'm hoping he'll do well. I kind of want to turn a little bit to prediction for this game, which is going to be hard to do without having seen the Blue Devils play yet. They're coming off a short week. Getting a score prediction may be difficult, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on who's going to win the game and why, and then what your score prediction is going to be.
Yeah, I think that Mike Elko, I'm extremely high on. I think that he's a defensive mind who is really going to scheme around, the Clemson game and make sure that he doesn't underestimate the Leopards. I think that he is someone who has proven last year to be able to turn around a team, especially when the team he left had such an unsuccessful season and you guys won 10 games last year. I think he's going to put you guys in a great position to win. I think overall on offense, you guys should be able to do a significant amount. And, I can talk about our defense until I'm blue in the face and talk about how talented they are. At the end of the day, we are not an FBS program. And I think our defense is talented, and I think our defense will give you guys a lot of challenges. However, you guys should be able to score pretty easily. And then it comes down to our offense and trying to be able to get push on that Duke defensive line. And, if we're able to do that, then we might be able to keep the game close and keep our offense on the field and keep time running, especially with these new college rules. But if not, it's going to be a lot to a little. I'm going to go out and I'll say 35-7.
So you're taking the Blue Devils. I thought that was very well reasoned analysis. I'm also going to take the Blue Devils. The only thing that I'm not sure about is the score. And you mentioned the running the ball. Duke's coming on a short week, quick turnaround. It wouldn't surprise me if the game is a little muddy for maybe the first quarter or a little bit past that, while Duke kind of settles in, a little off its rhythm. I think, though, that for the reasons that you mentioned, I don't like to say talent differential, because you all everybody works really hard, right? It's not like people are out there just kind of skating by. I mean, you've got some guys who have played at a high level of college football. You got a very good coach. Look at what he did at Franklin Marshall. I mean, that was really impressive. So I think he's going to have them prepared. I think it's going to be a fight, but I think that Duke is going to pull away with our weapons on offense and with our talent on defense. I'm a little higher on the secondary than maybe some people have been for Duke with Chandler Rivers. You got one good corner, as you know, that can completely change. One good guy in the secondary can change an entire game. And I'm not saying the other guys aren't good, but I'm just saying I get the vibe that Chandler Rivers is that dude. So I'm going to take Duke 35. I'm going to give, I don't know enough about your kicking teams, but I'm going to give the Leopards 3 more points. I'm going to say 35-10. In large part, there's probably going to be an effort if the game gets comfortable. I wouldn't be surprised if Elko and his staff start pulling guys out, and maybe we see some backups come in to rest a team that's going to have a short week and a short turnaround. Now, before we're done with the predictions, people who listen regularly know that Dad came on to predict the Clemson game. He's very happy in Richlandia. He's glad to know that there are other people who are in Richlandia with him. He took Duke to win that game, and he also predicted 10-2 for the Blue Devils, which I love to see. And there was a vote on Twitter. He's coming back to the podcast, so we are going to hear his call-in prediction now. All right, Dad, tell us what you think about the Duke Lafayette game. Who's going to win and why?
Well, hello, everyone. Rich Landia calling. I'd like to address several things with you today. The first is a lot of pressure is being put on to change my preseason prediction of 10-2 after the Blue Devil win on Monday night in Durham. But again, Rich Landia, or Bird World, as some people call it, is also known as Realityville. And there's just, any given Saturday or Monday night, as we've just seen, anything can happen in this game, and injuries can impact the season. So I'm going to stick at 10-2 right now for my season prediction. Secondly, for those of you who thought I was wrong to say Duke would beat Clemson, I'm not going to go all Coach Prime on you, but I was right, and you were wrong. Third, got a quick Lafayette preview for you. Thought you might be interested in some details about their first game of the season. They opened their season Saturday with a come-from-behind win over Sacred Heart by a 19-14 score. They managed to win with 292 total yards, of which 223 came on the ground, along with all three of their touchdowns. The workhorse in the backfield was a gentleman by the name of Jamar Curtis, who rushed 19 times for 181 yards. They only threw the ball 15 times, completing 8 for 69 yards while targeting 6 different receivers. They punted 4 times for an average of 35 yards a punt, and their kickoff average was 55 yards per kick. Defensively, they gave up 254 yards of total offense. They allowed Sacred Heart to possess the ball for about 35 minutes, and Sacred Heart was successful on third down half the time, 9 out of 18 tries, and 2 out of 3 tries on fourth down, while Lafayette was only 3 for 9 on third down and 1 for 1 on fourth. Lafayette committed 7 penalties for 65 yards. They missed a PAT, gave up 3 sacks, but also got 3 sacks. They were 2 for 2 in the red zone, and they had 2 preseason Patriot League all-conference selections, 1 at linebacker, 1 at tight end. But obviously this Curtis fella is making a strong statement for his inclusion for that honor at the end of this season. Over 6 yards per carry Saturday. No injury report from them yet. Obviously, our Blue Devils should be favored in spite of the quick turnaround. They should be a much deeper club, and hopefully a lot of those guys down the depth chart will get some playing time Saturday evening. But remember, the shoe's on the other foot. We got somebody coming in to looking to make a name for themselves this time. Lafayette's coach is also in his second year, like Coach Elko, and they've been working hard to get bigger, stronger, and faster too. So that's what you got to look forward to on Saturday. I hope we have another big crowd that's just as boisterous to support them. And just so proud. We've got a few things, obviously, we still need to clean up. We were actually pretty close to shutting them out. Great performance for a first game. Really impressed with the team speed and the talent level that we saw in the Clemson game. Certainly not a flawless game, but I think overall everyone would agree it was a quality first outing at home. Great atmosphere. I hope we again see that kind of atmosphere for this game, and we get to see a lot of the players further down on the depth chart because it should be a mismatch for the Blue Devils. Want to clean up a few things, obviously. Mistake in the punting game, and that was a little bit out of character for us, and some procedure penalties, of course. And but it was a good win, and have every opportunity to have a great outing again this week on Saturday evening. Hopefully that sun will get down a little quicker and cool things off for everyone. And predicting the score, well, I'll give it a shot. We all like to do it, but it's about the craziest thing that we engage in during football season. And just to make the Clemson fans a little angrier, I'm going to have Duke getting going. Might take them just a little bit to get going. Natural letdown, short week, big game coming up the following week. But I'll say Duke 42, but I'll let Lafayette squeak 10 points across just to aggravate the Clemson fans. Let's go Duke.
All right, Dad, thank you for that. Interesting as always. And now we are at a point where we give our guests a chance to have an open mic. Charlie, you were kind enough. God, I think I emailed you back when the schedules got announced. We set this up, and you've been very responsive, and I've enjoyed listening to you today. I've learned a lot about Duke's upcoming opponent. I appreciate the chance to get to know them, but you have answered a bunch of questions that I have had. So I am going to give you an open mic to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give a shout out to I think a couple guys who've flown under the radar and someone who I think your listeners can, pay attention to from the Lafayette side. I think on defense, I talked about Marco and Preston already, but I think Sekou White, number 11, is someone who's a safety who's all over the field as well, consistently leads the team in tackles in games. So, definitely look for 11 out there. And I think on the line, like I said, Mike and John are definitely two of the main guys, but also look for Ragger Langsdale, our left tackle, to have a great game and be able to, provide some push against that stout Duke line.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, before we go, we do need to check in with the boy for this week in sports. He is going to update us on the Ohio Bobcats game, which I am sure that he watched and did not pull a summary on that out of thin air while being reminded that he had to call in and give us that update. So let's check the voicemail and hear what the boy has to say now.
The Ohio Bobcats won 27-10 today against the LIU Sharks. Navarro had 2 touchdowns. CJ Harris had a touchdown. It was a pretty good display from the Bobcats. I wish they won more. And I think instead, at the end of the voicemails, instead of you saying "Go Duke," you should say "Go Bobcats," because yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you, son. You're excellent as always. You have a bright future.
Okay, we have another phone call. Now the voicemail here. This one is from the wife. Let's see what she has to say.
Ben, did you stop by and get the milk? Because I'm still waiting for the milk. Love you. Bye.
I don't know why you're calling me to get milk. I don't even know you. I don't even think we're married.
Okay, guys, that is week 2. You've gotten to know your opponents, the Lafayette Leopards. You can follow us on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Keep up with the podcast. Send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. On Twitter, that's what I'm calling it. Sorry, I'm not going to adapt. You can send us a direct message. Our DMs are open. And, of course, call the podcast, 540-632-0160. We did one voicemail episode. We'll do more and drop them into the podcast as we go if we get enough participation. So please keep it up. I want to thank my guest for today, Charlie Berman. I appreciate you coming on. I hope Lafayette has a good season. And thank you for taking the time to teach us what we need to know about our opponents. I hope I'm driving back from Durham happy on Monday night after a Duke win. And I hope we get to watch another Duke win on Saturday against the Leopards. So I'll close the podcast by saying, as always, go Duke.